Are we able to hit record?
No, we're just gonna stream both of it. That's what we've been doing. I hit record and then there was no pathway set for it to store to. So,
Okay.
and good lord, this screen is bright. All right, that's much better. All right, here we are. Welcome back, Button Club members, to another episode of the Safe Sets podcast. Shadow Fury here, my co-host as always,
Ricky Icebeam.
That's right. Streaming back to the stream again as we've been doing, and tonight we wanted to talk about some character popularity contests, basically, and how a lot of that has changed and developed over time. Anything you want to have to say about that?
Yeah, so the character popularity or the character tier list or the characters you're expecting to see, make a top 8 at a major, it's definitely changed between season 1 and season 2. And so season 2 is still very new and we still don't really know how it's going to pan out, but it feels like every week the perception of which characters are the strongest is changing.
And that's what's exciting, because thinking about Capcom Cup this past year and how we were so sick of seeing so many JPs and Lukes and and just a few character balances since then, I definitely feel like that number has fluctuated big time. If you guys in the chat have any opinions on what you think has changed between season 1 and all the way through into season 2, let us know. Chime in for us. But I think you want to start with the past?
Yeah, let's start with the past. Let's talk about early season 1.
Yes.
Yeah, let's flip the screen over.
So here we're going to be looking at CEO. This is from 2023, last year in June.
Yeah, so almost exactly a year ago, because today's June 21st?
That's true, yeah.
And so this is from June 24 of last year. So basically exactly a year ago, but also only about 3 weeks into the release of the game. I mean, we know that a lot of players were playing the crack for like weeks and weeks before the game released.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that was kind of isolated. Like you could only play offline, or you could play online with Parsec, which you pretty much only played with close friends. But there's like no online ranked or tournaments or anything like that. And so I feel like it was a lot in isolation, just a lot of people like learning the combo routes and stuff like that.
And like when there was practice mode in the crack beta, was all of the frame data information still there and available to use, or was that not all like really figured out and worked on yet?
I don't know. But even if the frame data wasn't there, I mean, the fact that you could go into training mode and practice stuff
was enough.
It was enough. I no, it's been over a year now. I think there was the like the frame data on there.
Yeah. This way you can solidly like figure everything out and stuff.
But the other thing too is like people weren't necessarily sure, like when they were playing the crack, they were like, we don't know how much of this is changing. Like they don't want to necessarily learn. I mean, they did, but they were worried, like, if I'm going to learn all my combo routes and all my frame traps and all my throw setups, and then it comes to find out that they change, my character's dash frames. The pushback after a throw in the corner, and then now all my setups don't work. But it ended up turning out that the things that were changed were very few, and like 99% of what people learned in the crack did work.
Yeah. So this number, meaning there were 6 juries in top 24.
Yes.
Which is like, good lord.
That's so many.
So many. More Guiles than I expected.
Well, you also have to realize that it's early in the game, and Guile is a relatively simple character. At least his game plan is simple. And so I feel like if you don't have a lot of time to learn a game, then it's like, well, not only were there Guile mains from Street Fighter V coming back and playing Guile in Street Fighter VI, but his game plan is just so simple that if nobody knows how the game's played, Guile's been playing the same game for how many years? Like 30 years?
30 plus years, right?
Over 30 years, right? So, Sonic Boom Flash Kick, parry sometimes, and you're in top 24 of CEO.
Yeah. Notice there's not a single JP on this right here, right?
Right, and I think that kind of goes to show you that, like, JP is a character that can play the game for you. But I think, like, in the very, very beginning, like, this is 3 weeks into the game, people didn't like JP because he wasn't really a Street Fighter character. Like, nobody knew who he was.
That's true.
And they didn't like fighting against him because basically your opponent would just like type in the code and then he would play for you, right? Like from this far, I'm gonna do the ground pound, and then I'm gonna put a portal, and then I'm gonna autopilot basically your whole game plan. And so I think a lot of Street Fighter fans and Street Fighter players with a lot of experience weren't really into that style. And then also you had to kind of learn all of his frame data and all of his setups to use them effectively at a high level.
And only one Ken I'm seeing. I think that's the most. Ken, Chun-Li, and
DJ.
And DJ.
Yeah, those three characters are very strong.
Very strong.
So to see only one is kind of surprising. I'm not surprised to see 3 Lukes and 3 Camis. In the beginning, I guess I could say I'm not too surprised to see 2 Manons, because before the game came out, but people had played it, they were all talking about the medal system and how it's broken, and that if she can get 4 or 5 medals, then she's number 1 in the game.
Yeah.
And it ended up not being the case. It ended up being that the character is very hard to use, and she essentially is not playing the same game as everybody else.
Yeah.
And so if you can get it to work, good for you, but everyone else out here is pressing crouch beam kick into drive rush.
That's right. Yep. Shout outs to your boy, DiGiorno. What we got in here? Foolery in the house. What's up, my boy? As someone carried by JP, I can confirm. You guys see my Discord message? Yes, we did. We were talking about that before we started the stream. Do you have any other information on that tournament so we can talk about it tonight once we're done with maybe this portion of the topics? So
yeah, we're hoping to see if there's like a bracket or notable players that are in there.
Yeah, we tried looking it up, but we couldn't find it. It was getting close to time, so... All right, so, and then I would say, let me go back to Big Cam here for a second so you can see.
Our beautiful faces.
That's right. So now I got to look at the rest of the stuff. Combo breaker. Okay, that's all basically...
Do you want to go to combo breaker next?
Yeah, so here we go.
So this, fast forward to about a year later. So this is combo breaker from May of 2024. And so this is the top 32 character usage. So the previous slide we were looking at was just a few weeks into season 1, and now here's a screenshot where it's just a few weeks into season 2. And so I feel like the tier list has been moved around. We don't know where the characters are going to land, and it's even harder to place them now because I feel like in season 1 we all kind of agree that there was like 5 or 10 characters that are at the top, 5 or 10 characters that are at the bottom, and anybody who's not in the top 10 or bottom 10 just lands in the middle.
Yeah.
But now I feel like so many characters are good and strong that the difference between a character being popular and doing well and playing consistently in tournaments is going to have to do with like what tools the characters have and if that's useful for the highest level of player. And I say that because I think characters that help you win and can kind of play for you are less valuable to top players because they can play for themselves.
Oh, that's
or like if you have a character that's like, oh, they're really good if you don't know the frame data, or oh, like they do these things and some of them are real and some of them are fake. And so if your opponent doesn't know the difference, it's really powerful.
Really strong.
That's great to get you in master ranked online, but then you run into Punk in an offline tournament, he knows all the frame data. He's going to check you every time.
Yeah.
And so I feel like in Street Fighter V, there was a conversation about Alex and how he was terrible and he kept getting buffed and he was still not good. And Capcom actually coming out and saying that they thought Alex was number 1 in the game. And I think that, I just think that goes to show you that like at a lower level of play, Alex is really good because you can't react to certain things. You don't know the frame data. He does things that are fake. You know, he might command grab you and dash up and he's 0 and he doesn't have a 3-frame jab. But if you don't know any of that stuff, you're getting command grab looped. Yeah, so I feel like that's going to be the difference when in a couple weeks from now, probably a month or so, when we have a better understanding and a better feel for which characters belong at the top and which ones belong at the bottom. I think the ones that are going to end up at the bottom are going to be the autopilot characters.
Wow. That's an interesting take.
What is your thought on that?
My thought is, of course, it only took a few minutes and and Temper's talking about coffee.
Uh-oh. Not again.
Season 3, Alex, Capcom, I beg of you, please. We'll keep our fingers crossed for you. I think that's an interesting take, and I think that we have so much change going on currently, and we are about a week away from another character being introduced into Street Fighter 6.
This is true, and Bison's about to unleash.
Yes, back to the Shadow Lu times. So I think right now is like my head is spinning with all that is going on in Street Fighter alone, let alone the entirety of the fighting game community.
Right.
But so I just feel like there's a lot going on. There's changes that were made to the core characters of season 1. And even like right now, the discussion on Akuma, I think, is so hit or miss.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what I was just saying about how like an autopilot character isn't very useful for a high-level player. I feel like a character like Akuma that can die in like 2 hits is not very useful for a mid-level player. And when I say mid-level, I mean like if you're barely hitting master rank, like 1500, or if you're like stuck in the diamond ranks, in my mind, that's like mid-level. That's like if you're playing Akuma and you're stuck in Diamond 4 or Diamond 5, you're very frustrated right now because you're constantly dying for like one mistake.
Yeah.
But if you're a top-level player, if you're of the caliber of like a Daigo or a Punk or a Mena RD, you're willing to accept the flaws that Akuma has because the upside is so high. His offense is so good. His damage output is so good. He's actually able to zone in this game very effectively. So I feel like if you're a top level player, Akuma is a smart pick for, if you want to have a Shoto as one of your, 1 to 3 characters, Akuma is a smart pick.
You think so?
I mean, at the highest level, I'm, making an assumption here that Akuma is going to be much better for a top level player than a character like Ryu. And then if you're down in like the master or diamond ranks, or early master and top of diamond ranks, that a character like Ryu is going to be much easier because he has similar damage output, but he can kind of just throw stuff out a little bit more recklessly. He doesn't have to confirm if his opponent is standing or crouching to combo into Tatsu.
Yeah.
Just and he has more health, so he can make more mistakes.
But I think that's still... So if you're looking at the high-level tournament player and then they're playing online against everyone, then I think Akuma is a little bit more viable because... at the end of the day, it's still ranked. You're trying to rank up, but taking a loss, you're there all night, you're playing, it's not as big of a deal. But I still think, and we've seen it already, the talks this week, where Daigo and Takedo are going to be playing Ken in tournament. Because regardless of the high level of play, you still can get 2-touched by this character. It's we all know it's don't get hit the game. But at the end of the day, people are going to get hit. And when he does, it hurts really, really hard. And it's still, you could say, man, if only I had picked Ryu or Ken, I'd still be alive. Or Luke, I'd still be alive. And I could have, easily dished out that much damage. So I think that's what makes the biggest uproar of that topic.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that, and we won't know until, a few weeks from now and see how it all plays out. But what we might see is very few players maining Akuma, but a lot of top players having a backup Akuma. For the one match they really need a quick win, whether their opponent is stronger than them or it's just a terrible matchup for their character, and they need that explosiveness.
Okay.
We might see someone pull out an Akuma where we don't necessarily expect it and blow up a Dalsum.
Yeah, that makes more sense, especially when you're looking at those high-level players and they are Akuma mains or Evil Ryu mains. I think they'll have no problem going, you know what? This matchup right here, I want Akuma. I just want to completely, obliterate my opponent and not have to think about it as much.
Yeah, and that being said, I don't think in Street Fighter 6 it makes a whole lot of sense to be playing multiple Shotas at the same time. Because they're really doing the same job, and so you're just kind of splitting your focus and giving yourself the opportunity to accidentally do Ken's combo route when you're playing Akuma and vice versa. So I feel like it's going to be a player that, let's say, mains Cammy or Juri or some other character, like Guile, and they're going to have a pocket Shoto. And it's up to them to decide, do I want a pocket Ken? Do I want a pocket Akuma? Do I want a pocket Luke? But for the Luke mains, for the Ken mains, there's not going to be. I don't think there's going to be many opportunities for them to pull out an Akuma and have it be worth their time to learn a whole character.
Yeah, yeah. Even my brother, we were playing this week, and we really wanted to do long sets, but not worry about win or loss. And then at the end of every game, just talk about what we think, and then after every set or whatever, and just kind of really be able to get a dialogue back and forth. So he wanted to play Ryu. I played Guile, and there were a few times where he was like, "Oh, I'm such an idiot. Here I am jumping in on you, and I'm hitting air fireball."
Oh, because he was playing Akuma.
Because he's been playing a lot of Akuma to try and get his Akuma to master rank. And and like you said, he's really splitting hairs right now because he's got a master rank Ryu, an exceptional Ryu.
Yeah, very good.
An up and coming Ken, and then in the works is his Akuma. But even I said, I go, if you're gonna diversify, I think you need to go beyond that realm and really try something that would be unique to you.
Yeah, if you're a Shoto main, stick with one Shoto. It's up to you to pick which one you like the best.
Yeah.
But pick one, stick with them, and then if you're going to learn a second or even a third character, I would say pick someone who's different. Pick someone who's not a Shoto. Maybe pick someone who doesn't have a motion DP. Because like in this game, having a motion DP is amazing. It's such a huge benefit. And so if you're going to play a character that's different, it's like, well, you might as well play someone maybe with a flash kick, like DJ or Blanca or Guile. Or maybe with no invincible reversal.
Yeah, so you're not tempted to do it.
That's actually a good point. I remember early in the Street Fighter V days when crush counters were so damaging before they added more scaling that, like, in the very beginning of Street Fighter V, if you were like a low-level player and you played like M. Bison, it was like, it doesn't matter what mistake you make, you're never getting crush counter for your mistake.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because crush counter wasn't, like in Street Fighter 6, punish counters after you whiff anything or do anything punishable on block. But in Street Fighter V, it was you could crush counter on the startup of their attack or punishing a DP only.
Because it was part of the priority, right? Like heavy punches had priority, so even if I was to hit your jab, it's crush counter, right?
Exactly. So if M. Bison's just walking around pressing stand heavy kick +3 on block, there's almost nothing. Like he can make terrible decision making. He can mash throw on wake up and mash jab whenever he wants. And it's like you're not getting crush counter for your trouble, so it's less risk. But if you're a similar low level player and you're playing Cammy in Street Fighter V and you're just waking up DP all the time, you're dead in 2 seconds.
Yep. Let's check out chat for a second. M. Bison looks mad good. I got a bad feeling. He does look really good.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of players right now that are playing characters that they don't love, and they're waiting for a new character to come out, and I think a lot of them are going to find a home with M. Bison.
I think so, too. I'm interested in trying out M. Bison. I'm not saying he's going to persuade me, but I kind of just want to see what he's all about because he looks attractive gameplay wise to me, but I'm not sure. I might not want to just switch it up yet because I think even as of this week, I'm like, no, like stay nailed to Guile.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Guile's your main.
Yep. Even if it's not on every day, right?
Right, not every day, not every matchup.
Yeah.
Have a secondary Shoto, but I think you're a Guile main in this game.
At the same time, if every character comes out cheap, I'm good with it. When you play bad with Akuma, you feel it way worse. It's true. And when you're frustrated and then, you make a silly mistake, you've paid for it that much harder. It's the fireballs. Without them, other Shotos are a better fix. Okay, so his fireballs are just that strong. If you're going to play him, that's one of the big things.
Yeah, if you're going to play Akuma in this game, like if you're picking a Shoto and you're leaning toward Akuma, you have to play like your Sagat in neutral until you can find an opening, until you can get a hit. And then you can rush in and be the demon. But until then, it's like take zero risk. You don't need the reward.
Yeah. Because even in those little pokes and situations in neutral and things like that, it all adds up even a lot quicker because of that extra damage.
Right.
So let's move on to which one was not that one. This is recently. And this was last night, or this
the Topanga Championship. Yeah, let's take a look at this one.
Okay, yeah. The Topanga Championship character representation. So not a big surprise to see 7 Akumas in week 1.
I'm a little surprised to see 7. Like if you're looking at the rest of these, like if there was like 7 Lukes and 7 Kens and all these things, then I would be like, oh yeah, like 7 Akumas, that makes sense. but to see the disparity between Akuma and pretty much everybody else is surprising. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Topanga Championship is like round robin pools.
Oh, okay. I'm not quite sure either.
Yeah, so I haven't been paying attention so closely to this one, but in the past I've watched the Topanga leagues, and it's like separate pools where you basically do a round robin, and then depending on your win losses, you get points.
Okay.
And then I think at the end of it, and I'm trying to remember, they might have had something like 8 different pools of X number of players, and at the end, the top 2 from each of the 8 pools makes it to like a top 16 tournament. And I think it was like the top 1 from each group is in winner side, and the second of each group is in loser side.
Makes sense.
So I think you were saying like when you make a mistake with Akuma, it hurts so bad because you pretty much just die instantly. And in a double elimination bracket with hundreds and hundreds of players in it, the odds of getting scrubbed out or randomed out, or you make one mistake and you die, it's scary to use Akuma the entire way through. And so I'm thinking that we're seeing more Akumas on this list because it's round robin, because you can afford to lose a game, arguably not your fault.
I understand.
As long as you're consistently winning like 5 out of your 6 games, your points are going to be up there. You're probably going to make it to the top 2 of your group.
When the character is so new, also, it'd be easy to just kind of cheese out a few wins, extra wins, right? Because people are a little bit more unfamiliar with the matchup while you've been grinding. So I think that says a lot about that also. But, this number, this is never going to stay like this. This is just because the character's red hot right now and everywhere. What is surprising to see not only that much there, but to see this number, I feel like increasing over the tournament time, is your boy Ed with 4 Eds.
Yeah, I think Ed is a kind of a sleeper pick. I think we were talking about it last week. We were looking at some other graphic, and I think there was like 3 Eds right next to 3 Lukes and 3 Kens and maybe 3 Camis. And we were joking about how they're all blonde characters.
That's right. Yeah.
And I had mentioned that, this is essentially a popularity list of strong characters that pro players use. And Ed was up there with, the characters we expected to see. And so if you don't know your Ed matchup and you go to an offline tournament, like a big one, like we're going to defend the North this year.
See us there.
If you don't know your Ed matchup, you're eventually going to run into a strong Ed on your way to trying to make it to top 32. Yeah.
Even was a couple of weeks ago that Ed player that showed up to Button Club that knew to Nelbomb there, and even I was like so happy to see an Ed, someone that was a new face playing an Ed and played him very competently. So I was like, I really hope to see this guy more often because I need that help with that matchup. It's just great to see. It's surprising but awesome to see this character kind of take off because of his reception in 5, but I think that they have sauced up this character enough that he is interesting at a high competitive level.
Yeah, I'm even wondering if there are Dalsum mains who are actually like picking up Ed because they're kind of playing the same game
a little
plan,
bit.
but Ed is more aggressive and kind of is playing Street Fighter 6, where Dalsum, he typically does play his own game.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually a really, really good point. I wonder if Tomlet was in the chat. I wonder if he found that there to be a carryover there from Dalsum to Ed. His Ed didn't last as long as Dalsum, but foolery. Only Daigo and Fujimura are the only 2 Akumas in the Topanga right now.
Oh, I see. So that's the other thing about this graphic is this is not the ones who made it out of their pools. This is everybody. And so there's a lot of Akumas, but they, according to Temper, only 2 of them made it out, and it was Daigo and Fujimura, 2 of the strongest players in the world. And so only 2 out of the 7 Akumas made it out. And that kind of backs up what we were saying about the consistency factor, where it's hard to win consistently with a character with 1 health.
I think that Ken, it looked like there was a big shadow over Ken starting season 2 with Ryu buffs, Akuma, and he got a couple of ups and downs here and there.
Yeah, but I would say surprisingly he overall came out buffed.
Yeah.
Like I think because Ken was, and I'll say this carefully, he was very strong in season 1, especially towards the end. I wouldn't say he was top 3. I would say he's probably like number 4, number 5, something around there. But he's very good. but also Ken's a popular character. So
Mhm.
Ken is even like mid-tier. You're going to see 1 or 2 of them in the top 8 here and there.
I see.
So when Ken is above average, when Ken is top 5, it seems like he's stronger than he is because he's such a popular character. People love this character so much. And so for Ken to come out of into season 2 stronger than he was in season 1, but everyone else kind of got buffed too, right?
Yeah,
Ryu got buffed. Akuma came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think that we're always going to see Ken's around as long as he's strong. And so the thing I'm surprised with on this list is no Lukes.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Temper is saying, because just to skip down to the bottom here, 0 Lukes, 0 DJs, Blanca, JPs.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see if you're like a pro level player and this is the highest level of top competition, for all the characters on this bottom row, I get it except for Luke.
Really?
I think of all these characters on the bottom, like I would expect to see I was expecting to see multiple Lukes, maybe 1 DJ, maybe 1 Blanca.
Yeah, okay, I could see that.
And everyone else, it kind of makes sense. Like, I understand why there's no Marizas. I understand there's no Ryus because they're playing Ken and Akuma instead.
Yeah.
No, E Honda's not that popular with high level players. JP just got a bunch of nerfs.
So JP is just kind of falling off, right?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because I don't think the character is necessarily unplayable now. I just think that perception goes a long way.
Yes.
So when people perceive the character as being dead, if you're a JP main and let's say you were at 2000 MR and then your character gets nerfed and you're playing ranked and you're down to 1800 MR, you might choose to stay home instead of going to an offline tournament. And then same thing, if you are a JP main and you are struggling to hit, let's say you are struggling to maintain your 1500 MR, you're bouncing between 1400 and 1500 and not going up, and then your character gets nerfed, you might as well switch characters. So even though I think the character is perfectly functional and maybe mid-tier, we're just not going to see as many of him anymore.
And I think that's exactly what I think that applies to what you're saying also there, Foolery, is the fact that everyone playing DJ switched. I don't get it. It's a perception thing. He's perceived as weaker than previous, and even if he's still completely tournament viable and doing good, the first thing, I mean, honestly, even if it was just topic, right? Just making small talk with someone, and who do you play? DJ, be like, oh yeah, even after the season 2?
Yeah, even after the nerf.
Like it would just be something that I would say, and then that's how those things become more and more relevant, because it's a statement now, and that's what everyone's going to be thinking. So it just goes to show you, he's too much work instead of having an easy win condition. JP, okay, he's too much work.
Say that at high level play, JP can play for you, and high level players don't need that. And so if it's almost like, this isn't a great analogy, but let's say someone is using modern controls, not just for the instant supers, but because let's say they when they go for uppercuts, they accidentally get fireballs, right? They're at that level of skill. And so for them, using modern controls helps them so much because they're not making the mistakes they were making before. But then you compare that to a player that never gets fireballed when they want a DP, and they have no problem reacting to drive impact in the corner with supers and all these other things. Using the modern controls isn't helping them as much. And so they're better off using manual controls, similar to, instead of using an autopilot play for me character, let me use someone who's more manual, like Ed or Akuma or Cammy, where if I make a mistake, I die, but guess what? I don't plan on making any mistakes.
So do you think that what is eventually going to become so strong in the game are those harder to play characters? That's basically what you're saying? Yeah,
the harder to play characters, because they're either low health or they're more technical, but also the characters that there's not a great way to explain this, but like very manual, where like they don't rely on setups as much. They don't rely on gimmicks, or don't rely on your opponent not understanding the situation, or not even necessarily relying on throw loops. I mean, I think throw loops are extremely powerful right now. But I think if you're a top level player, it's like you don't even need the game to give you the easy offense.
Interesting. And is that something that has happened before in other games? Is that a trend that you've seen? Like at the end of Street Fighter V, Dhalsim became more popular and really considered really, really strong. Is that an effect of that because of the game changing, or was that just the hard work of Dhalsim players?
I think it's both. I think that some of the other characters that were regarded as easy to play and strong started getting nerfed. Dhalsim got some small buffs, and then the Dhalsim players just never gave up on him. And then also the Dhalsim players learned all the other matchups. So let's say Balrog is a bad matchup for a Dhalsim, and it's a matchup that you have to know all the frame data and all the frame traps and all the things that Balrog can do. Once the Dhalsim players learned all the things Balrog can do, now the Dhalsim players are relatively stronger. And not all the Balrog players necessarily know the Dhalsim matchup that deep because they're just walking around pressing stand heavy kick and winning all the time. So they don't need to know all of Dhalsim's frame data and traps.
That was spoken from experience. You heard that?
Spoken from some. But I feel like a really good example of this is like if you look at where Cammy is. Because even in Street Fighter V, and it's the same thing in Street Fighter VI, Cammy is really, really powerful in the right hands and in a liability in weaker hands. So like in Street Fighter V, Cammy was like the most popular character, I think, out of all of them. But then when you look at her win rate, and I might be paraphrasing some of these numbers, but it was something along the lines of like Grandmaster Cammys had like a well above average, like an 80% win rate or something crazy like that.
Wow.
And then if you looked at the Cammys that were like platinum and below, they had like a 30% win rate. Like it was, I might be making up the numbers, but it was like well below average. And it was like, here's a character that a lot of people are playing, but if you're a low level player, she's hurting you. And if you're a top level player, she's helping you. And I was saying that before. I think that's going to be the difference between, tournament viable characters or characters you're going to see top players choosing to spend their time on. It's going to be the more technical characters, the more manual characters. They're going to let them, whiff punish things and express themselves and not necessarily lean on the character to play for them.
Where does Aki fit into that conversation?
I think Aki is a very specific character, meaning that even though she's extremely strong right now, I don't think anyone's arguing that, certain players are just not going to spend their time learning her. Right? Like I do not expect Daigo to pick up Aki, even though if he did decide to, I think he would do well. And there's lots of players who are strong enough to utilize a character's tools and to great success. But I think it's like they have to think the character looks cool, think that the tools that the character have are what they are trying to do. Or if they're going to pick up a character as a secondary, does this character do something different than my main does? And win the matchups that I'm struggling in.
Yeah, because that's the whole point of adding that extra character to your resume, is so you can cover your ass on the other matchups that you're not so strong with. But it's still a daunting task to learn two characters, regardless. Yeah,
but we saw it with Mena, right? Like Mena's top two characters in season
That's
1
true.
was Luke and Blanca, and it turned out like Luke was top tier and solid, and Blanca was top tier but kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so when he needed to go crazy, he picked the craziest character, and when he needed to go solid, he picked the most solid character. And he won Capcom Cup. So
yeah, and would switch it on back and forth and stuff. If you remember, Evo last year. And then I think also, I think we talked about this earlier, is the fact that, we just got Akuma and Bison is on the way, and then things are going to marinate for a bit, and then we're all, I think, going to get our minds blown again at Evo this year.
Yeah, and Evo's, how deep into the summer is that?
It's end of July?
Oh, so like a month from now.
End of July, I think? Let me look it up.
Yeah, because I think you were saying that when we go to Defend the North, which is the beginning of August, that's going to be after Evo. You would think they would have the date like right on the top of the page.
Yeah. Announcement show.
37 days, yeah. So the end of July.
Yeah.
Yeah, so about 4 or 5 weeks from now.
So that's going to be another thing, because I know that's what the discussion was last year at that time, when people were still trying to figure out the game was only out for a couple of months. Here's Evo, and then I did it also. I had to look at that top 8 and go, okay, this has to tell me something, right?
Right, yeah, they know better than we do.
Yeah. I know they've been grinding at least triply as hard as I have been. So when I saw no Guiles in top 8 and very little Guile representation, that's when I was like, okay, while it's early, maybe I should make the switch. Everyone's talking about Ken. I've never been a Ken main before, but it's Shoto, so it still is familiar. Let's give that a shot and see where we go from there.
Yeah, and I think now going into season 2, I think main and Guile and secondary Ken is a great combination.
Yeah. And I think it worked so well against Temper's Akuma with the Ken, which I was like just so surprised with. I was so surprised that week when I did that good, and even last week playing online, I really was like, man, my Ken. And what did you say about it? You were basically like, my expectations were low because it had been a while, so when I played and did well, it felt better.
Yeah, and then same thing, if you're sticking to the same character for a while, your expectations to play well and to not make mistakes is higher. And so if you make like one mistake with the character that you've been focusing on, you're like you almost like reel back in your chair. Like, I can't believe I didn't get a flash kick. Like I've been playing Guile nonstop for the past 4 weeks. I can't believe I got jump back light kick.
You know it, my friend. You know it. What's also interesting is to see. I feel like I notice my mistakes more so than anyone else's mistakes, but because I'm in it, I know what my intention was and things like that. But I have been seeing the higher level players make some of the same mistakes that I make, and I can't tell you how good that makes me feel. Not even just amongst Button Club. I've been watching, Guile replays, Rain Pro, and was it Aquino or whatever. And I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, they flash kicked too early too on that cross up. They made the same mistake. Oh, okay, and they died for it. It's those tiny little things that I go, okay, because for a while you go, I'm all right. I'm making this mistake. It's on me. I'm gonna refine and watch the timing. And then when time goes by, you go, have I not done enough to change that? What is going on? Is it me? Like you were saying about DPs earlier, how it holds value in this game. I find my DPs in this game to be the worst they've ever been. I think I had better DPs in 5. When we played Strive a couple of weeks ago, Potemkin has a DP motion for an air grab, and I was so solid on that every single time. So I don't know what it is about this game and those inputs, but it just, I get so messed up on DP.
And is that the DP's not coming out, or it comes out and like goes under?
It doesn't come out when I want. And I know you've seen this before too, where I'll get heavy punch to DP.
Oh, I hate that.
So that does happen to you too?
Not very often.
But it has happened?
Because of the way I input it on my hitbox, it doesn't happen very often at all. I think it happened to me like yesterday for the first time in like months. It happened to me like twice.
When that happens, dude, I feel so dumb and embarrassed and lost all that health. So yeah, like crosscuts are hard, getting them on time, not getting fireball accidentally.
Yeah, because when I say that the way I input it on hitbox, when I DP, I'll hold down and then I'll mash forward and then I'll press punch one time.
Yeah. Because you don't want to be doing this the whole time.
Right.
And then even when you're holding back to block still, you're able to just kind of like roll it forward. Why
would I block if I'm doing a DP?
Oh, because like let's say like we're in neutral or I'm backing up, and then I see you make that jump in. I was kind of already holding back because I was walking away. So then I go, oh, he's jumped. Now I want a DP. I think that's when I really make the mistakes, is when I'm going from blocking or down back or.
Yeah, because I'll go from down back. I'll just let go of back, but keep holding down, and then start mashing forward and hitting punch.
That dexterity for me feels so weird. It feels more like a wrist movement than a finger thing. It
definitely takes practice, and you kind of have to be at least somewhat expecting, like, oh, they could jump here. So even though I'm not inputting DP yet, it's like on my mind of like, I might need to throw in a DP soon.
Yeah. Tomla asks, are you going to be giving Bison the 3-week free trial like you gave Akuma, or are you just sitting with Luke?
I'm just sitting with Luke.
Yeah.
Akuma was really, really cool, really, really fun character. I enjoyed learning him. It's unfortunate that I feel like it's not worth it for me to play 2 Shotos, and I'm calling Luke a Shoto in this game because he has the crouch window kick drive rush. He has an uppercut. He has a great fireball.
Yeah.
The knuckle is similar to a Tatsu. He's a Shoto.
Yeah.
And so I don't see the need to play 2 Shotos. And so I'm maining Luke, and then I need a secondary character. I'm leaning toward Guile just because I have so many years of Guile experience, but I'm still not 100% sure.
No. And what is it about Guile that like holds you back from wanting to play him?
So I think it's just it's mostly me. It's that Guile is so different in 6 than he was from 5 that it almost feels like a different character.
Really?
Yeah, and the biggest difference is like if you remembered Sagat in Street Fighter 4 and even like Street Fighter 2, he was like tall and quick.
Yeah.
And then when they brought him into 5, they made him like really, really slow and like heavy hitting.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's just different. So like if you're a Sagat main in 4, it's very jarring to pick up Sagat in 5. And that's how I kind of feel with Guile, where Guile was much quicker in 5, and now he's more sluggish in 6. And so
dealing with that makes a big difference for you.
Yeah, and I mean it's a different game, and I have to adapt. And I think I can still play Guile to a reasonably high level. I think I just have to really sit down and kind of figure out like which matchups do I hate playing as Luke, and do I think it'll be better with Guile. And if I don't come to that conclusion, then even though the characters are very different and I'm capable of playing Guile, it's not very valuable for me to have a backup Guile.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of need to do my homework on. And then again, if Guile's not the secondary, who is? And is that character even here right now?
Yeah, that's true. Because what would it take to steal your heart instantly and go, oh, I know, besides the obvious, which would be what? In the chat, you guys know who I'm talking about? Who would be an obvious switch for...
That would be switching my main. That would be putting Luke on the back burner.
Yeah. Oh, so this character would be more of a main?
Oh, yeah, Colleen.
Yeah, there you go.
Colleen would be number 1. Luke who?
What traits are you looking for in character 2 that you want that Luke isn't giving you?
Well, that's the thing. I don't really know because Luke can kind of do it all. And so I feel like for the most part, if I'm not winning with Luke, it's not Luke's fault. It's my fault. And there's matchups that are really annoying to fight. And that might be, it might be less about Luke and more about me, or just about like my lack of experience in that matchup. Because Luke kind of has all the tools he needs.
It's like it's not a bad matchup on paper. It's just a bad matchup for you personally, right?
Right. Or like it's a 5-5 matchup and it's annoying and I'd like it to be 6-4, but I don't always have that luxury. Right? Like even though Luke can totally blow up Dalsum, fighting Dalsum can be very annoying. And so in my head, I'm like, well, what if there was a character that was better at fighting Dalsum? It's like, well, Guile's not better at fighting Dalsum than Luke.
Yeah. Every time I fight a Dalsum, besides Tom, that I fought other Dalsums, they're always like, I hate this matchup. I hate the Guile Dalsum matchup.
Well, actually, the one thing that Guile can do against Dalsum that Luke struggles more with is if you can react to Dalsum's teleport and you react to the fact that he teleported close to you, you can just input flash kick and not worry about what side he landed on.
Yeah.
Or even better, you could do something like react with crouch medium kick and then flash kick. Because when you crouch medium punch him, I said crouch medium kick, crouch medium punch. When you crouch medium punch him, it gives him that airborne state where you can hit him with a second attack. So I feel like with Luke, I always try to do like a button and then DP. But depending what side they're on, sometimes I get confused or I don't react. I'll input the DP backwards.
Okay.
So with Guile, I could just button and then flash kick, and I don't have to worry about what side they're on.
I've even crouching medium punched and jabbed Maurice's Superman punch into flash kick. Yep. I'll hit them low, it'll break the armor, and then flash kick. I think Guile is definitely a problem with Sin. That's your problem, buddy. His Boom's recovery make me not able to play zoning because I can't match him on fireball game or pressure with normals at distance.
Can you just stand heavy punch under the fireball? Even if you get hit, I feel like it's worth it.
Oh,
man. You know what I mean? Like if Dalsum does the stand heavy punch, hits Guile, even if Dalsum then gets hit by the Boom, I feel like that's a worthy
because
trade.
It's like a heavy compared to like landing on a projectile would be like scaled like crazy.
Not only that, but I feel like it's just like if let's say you did that 6 times in a row, Guile doesn't want to get hit by 6 stand heavy punches.
Last slide I want to talk about for character representation before I have another question for everybody, and that would be this guy right here, the qualified characters for the Esports World Cup. Now, this has obviously been a big deal, the Esports World Cup. We know there's a lot of money on the line here. So this is completely up to date, and we see already the most popular characters being Ken and Guile right off the rip.
So your characters.
That's right. Let them know. Yeah, and that makes me feel good. That gives me a warm feeling, kind of like a hug or a blanket around the shoulders, because I like that.
Well, it's kind of a blessing and a curse, right? Like, this is telling you these two characters are really, really strong. And so if you're struggling, it's essentially your own fault.
Oh, yeah. No. That's true. My recent thing was just the fact with season 2 and all of its changes.
And like the drive rush.
The drive rush scaling and the buffs to Ryu and how cool that looked. Even last night playing against my brother, I said, you got to be using like OD donkey kick more in mid-screen and OD Tatsu in the corner and save your drive meter, because we had one match where he was burnt out before 10 seconds was up.
Wow.
You know, just trying to be aggressive. So I think that's where all that came from. And I wanted to see, like, I didn't want to see Guile get blown up in either way, but I was like looking for, like, can my toy have new things to do, make kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, you know, bringing up the drive rush nerf. So I labbed it with Luke, and it turns out there's very, very few situations where Luke should not be drive rushing.
Really?
Because, like, Luke doesn't have great combos without drive rushing. Like he can OD knuckle, and then he can do the OD follow-up on the knuckle. That does a buttload of damage, but it also costs 3 bars.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like unless that combo is really going to kill, or if they're already in the corner, it's fine because you don't care about the corner carry anymore. But if you hit your opponent mid-screen with Luke, I feel like I'm better off drive rushing for the corner carry and the Oki than to go for damage. And so I labbed it all, and I was trying to figure out, like, oh, like, is there better punishes if I just spend OD attacks? It's like, no, it's, you know, about the same damage.
I found that the new stuff that Guile can do with OD blade to boom isn't really changing anything for me anyway, because only one of those is 2 bar. The full meal is 3 bar.
Yep.
And I'm not getting a whole lot of damage with how the combo is structured anyway. I'm getting good like Oki situations, but I might want to just reserve that for very particular situations, you know?
Right.
So that was my season 2 dilemma.
Yeah, and really quickly, just to cover this, we talk about the difference between spending 3 bars on a drive rush or 2 bars on an OD attack. When you drive rush in a combo, until the combo is over, you don't recover any drive meter, even if you do a long combo, because like the drive meter comes back over time, and it comes back a little bit faster if you're walking forward. It comes back a little bit faster if you're making contact with your opponent. But if you drive rush mid combo, it freezes.
Yeah.
So when you spend 3 bars, you're spending 3 bars. When you do an OD attack, it only costs 2 bars. But if you haven't drive rushed in that combo, then your meter's coming back during the combo.
Yeah.
So if you do, like with Luke, let's say I have my opponent in the corner and I combo into OD knuckle, and then I do light fireball into light DP, I basically only spent 1.5 bars, because by the time the combo's over, I got a 0.5 bar back.
Yep. You're being rewarded for being aggressive, getting the hits going.
Right. So that's a big difference, where it's not like, you basically have to think of it as, instead of thinking drive rush costs 3 and OD costs 2, it's like, no, drive rush costs 3, OD costs 1.5.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
That is a big difference, which is what that really just kind of goofed me up. And I felt like I could play Ryu. It would be good for my brother and I to both main the same character, because we would still play them very differently, but the tech that we could share between each other would just be so immense. But I don't want to be mixing myself up right now before this tournament. I want to be able to go to Defend the North as solid as can be, and if I want to play around with my time for the rest of the year from, you know, September, October on, then I'll do it then. But right now I need to like just tunnel focus in. Those 2 characters are also number 1 in everyone matchup knowledge. That's true. If it's a popular character, people are going to have a better idea on how to fight against it. Hot Dog, Xian, what's that? Oh, who's the DJs? Okay, I see. I'm sure you guys covered it before I came in, but give me the cliff notes on your Bison impressions. Oh, yeah. That was last week, right?
Oh, no, we were talking about it today. So,
okay.
So I think Bison's going to be both popular and strong. And I think that there's a lot of players that are playing Street Fighter 6 and they don't love their character. and they're kind of waiting for the new DLC characters to come out and really hoping that they love one of them. And I think a lot of them are going to find a home with M. Bison.
I think there's already been some discourse on Twitter about people are mad that the knee press there, the scissor legs is
-3.
No, that it's a motion. People were more upset that it was
it's
a motion.
I didn't know that.
It's quarter circle forward now.
So, but he has the I'm forgetting the words.
Psycho Crusher. Yep.
That's charged.
That's charged.
So Sonic Boom input, I assume.
Yep. And then Head Stomp and Devil's Reverse, all that is still the same charge move. But yeah, legs is quarter circle, and then I think there might be one other move that he has in motion. What were you gonna say?
So in Street Fighter V, he had the purple flames, and that was not charged. And I feel like, and it could just be my assumption, I feel like they're trying to give charge characters at least one non-charge special move.
So trying to entice the other people.
Well, not only just that, I think it's just like a quality of life thing. Like there's situations where you dash up and go jab, jab. And then if you have drive meter, you can drive rush to continue your combo. But like jab combos got nerfed, drive rush got nerfed. And what if you're in burnout? You dash up, you go jab, jab, nothing.
Oh, yeah.
So I think they're trying to make sure that charge characters have at least one special move that's not charge, so they can do something when they're in burnout and they get a hit. So like DJ has the Tatsu kick. What am I thinking? The baby.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So baby's not charge. Not Luke. Guile has the Sonic Blade. That's not charge.
Yeah.
And the follow up is also not charge.
Yeah.
And then M. Bison is looking like his scissor kicks.
Yep. And Tom's also saying his back fist is a motion now, which is like that back fist combo that puts the mine on you, the Psycho Mine.
Oh,
the bomb.
So that was his V Trigger 2.
Yeah, from 5. Yeah.
It's interesting that they're giving him that.
So they gave him that, so it'll pop in time,
or you can input.
Yeah, or you can make it go off yourself, but it's only through special moves. So if I Psycho Crusher in once they have the bomb on them, that'll pop it, and it'll keep my pressure going with the block stun frames.
I would have assumed that it's kind of like JP's Portal, where you snap your fingers to pop it.
Yeah.
I would think that whatever input it took to lay the bomb or attach the bomb to them, you do the same input to make it go off.
Mm-hmm.
That's how his V Trigger 2 worked, where you did the V Trigger input to get the grab and the bomb on them.
Yeah.
And then you like do a block string and you hit it again and he goes like this.
You can do back fist motion again to make it pop.
Or any special moves.
Or certain special moves that have the psycho power.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think that'll be cool. And I think that they did that to because he's a charge character, mostly, but he's got an insanely fast drive rush, and now he's got that bomb technique on you. So I think he's going to be he's going to have aspects of Street Fighter V where he's making those plus frames. He's giving you that pressure on top of you without the buttons being so plus.
Yeah.
And he's got mobility like crazy where he's not just going to be walking mad slow with his arms crossed. He's going to be doing the Flintstones run at you with that drive rush and making his way in. So yeah, I think it's going to be, I think he's going to be really, really sick. We'll have to just wait and see.
The one thing I will say about Bison's run, his drive rush being so fast, I'm just hoping that means that there's a certain distance that he has to run before he can stop. That way, if he's relatively far away, let's say he's like a jump distance away from you, that if he drive rushes at you, you should be able to react to it before you can stop.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like there's lots of characters that will like throw you and then they'll drive rush, and if you react to the drive rush of the ODDP, they don't have time to stop and block the DP. They're going to eat it.
Because they're still,
So I'm hoping that because his drive rush is so fast, that means he has to cover
a lot of ground
before he can stop.
Like you could be jumping, he could be drive rush, and then you'll switch sides on him because he has to go like 3/4 screen almost.
Right.
That makes sense. Lord Senzu, the beard lineup is looking sick. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to miss Hellfire, but back fist combo is going to be really nice, and I'm going to miss the EX projectile for setups.
Oh, thank God that's gone. You didn't need that.
Any Psycho special pops it. Yeah, can't manually pop it because you can back fist combo while the bomb is on them. Oh, okay. From Bison, I'm gonna go on a limb and say every character with no low forward are going to have super fast drive rushes. Okay, to make up for it, just to kind of get in. Even though Jury kind of breaks that rule. Yep. Yeah, his walk speed is so insane. Yeah.
So wait, Bison doesn't have crouch medium kick into dry rush?
I guess not. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it.
There was a whole like 7-minute thing that Capcom posted about how to play him and what to do and how everything worked and stuff. So I'm not sure if they mentioned that in there exactly. They probably did. All right. Lastly, I'm sorry we got off on a tangent here because of Tomlet. I just want to finish this up, and I got one more topic.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised to see Ken and Guile towards the top. I'm not surprised to see Rashid or Luke. What about some of these other characters? We're seeing JPs, we're seeing DJs. I'm not surprised to see one Zangief.
No, not at all. In this day and age with what's going on. And this also includes secondary characters, so anyone that has a backup in there, this is also being represented.
Yeah, so that's what the pink circle is. So like Luke is on the row of 3 and he has a pink 1. And so that's saying there's 2 Luke mains and 1 Luke secondary.
And this makes sense also. Rashid and Luke. I would love to see more Rashid in our scene to learn the matchup. There's just not a lot of people playing this character. And he's good, so it kind of makes me like, why don't I see more of this character?
Yeah, and that's kind of the blessing and the curse of having a quote unquote balanced fighting game is so many characters are viable that if, let's say we get 12 players that are weekly, we might get 12 different characters and Rashid might not be one of them.
Yeah, and then we got a couple of JPs, Blanca. So this also makes sense to me. This looks logical.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to see that there's like one Cammy main, one backup Cammy, one DJ main, one backup DJ. I really feel like certain characters really lend themselves to be a secondary, and other characters that are like you main them or you don't touch them. Kind of like Chun-Li. I feel like Chun-Li is technical enough that it doesn't really make sense to have a secondary Chun-Li. You're either Chun-Li main or you don't touch Chun-Li.
Because she takes all of your focus for what she needs to do, basically.
Yeah, and she is also similar to Luke, like kind of she can do it all, but she's not easy to play. So it's like, if I'm going to do it all with this character, and she's very technical and relatively low damaging and needs to get lots of hits on you, it's like, yeah, it's going to require all my focus. I need to know all the setups. And then it's like, okay, as a Chun-Li main, I then have some backup character to cover my terrible matchups.
And then we have a modern Ed, which I guess I would expect to see something in modern. I think that's kind of been like a theme. We've seen at least one modern peppered into some of these lists.
Yeah, and I feel like obviously there's many benefits to playing modern. And I feel like the number one biggest benefit is instant supers.
Yeah.
So like if you're in the corner and you're in burnout and your opponent has drive meter, you're worried they're going to drive impact, but you don't know, are they going to just do it? Are they going to press a button and do it? Are they going to press a button and then not press it? So it's hard to react, especially if you're using a character like Guile.
Yeah.
Guile, I think, is probably the hardest character to react with super because you have to charge your supers. So you, like other characters like Luke, if I'm in the corner, I have level 2, I can just kind of keep mashing back and down. And then if they DI me, I can just press punch and they got punished. But with Guile, it's like you have to hold down back. You have to be staring at the screen and you basically have one chance to input it in time. And so if you input it and they don't do it, you lost your charge. Now you can't do it.
Yep.
You can't mash it like other characters. So I feel like that's a big disadvantage for Guile.
What I've seen recently, or what I've even tried recently, it's very expensive because it's technically all 3 bars. But if I can react to a drive impact with my level 2, that animation gives me enough time to charge buffer level 1. So as soon as I get back into the game, I can get level 1, and I've used that to break to give myself the time. But it's all 3 bars now in one situation. If it's going to win me the set, that's amazing, But
that's a really interesting point. If you input your level 2 as Guile because they DI'd, will you have time to back throw them?
Now that's something I haven't worked on.
Because that would be really valuable. Like if you're Guile, you're stuck in the corner, they DI, you react with level 2, like you're doing the input I was talking about. With Ed. You're just kind of mashing down and back. You see the DI, you press punch, you pop your level 2. Now you're burnt out, so you can't OD flash kick. So I wouldn't even try to regular flash kick because you might trade with the DI.
Yeah.
But you might have enough time to back throw because it's only 5 frames.
Yeah. Well, we know what we're labbing after this episode. I'll tell you that. What do we got here in the chat? Is it possible for a button masher to potentially be a skilled player, or will they just get exposed?
I'm a button masher. I mean, it depends on what buttons you're mashing, when you're mashing them, and why.
I guess so.
If you say button masher as in you're pressing buttons, you don't know what they do, and you're not sure why you're pressing them, then that's holding you back. You're better off pressing less buttons and losing. Like let's say you button mashed and won, or if you pressed less buttons, you would have lost. You're actually better off pressing less buttons and losing because you're learning more and you're taking the steps to get closer to being competent and eventually a stronger player.
See, you gotta write that one down there, Lord Senzu. Tomlet responds saying mashes are actually surprisingly hard to fight when you're used to people pressing methodically.
Yeah.
But you're leaving yourself open to getting blown up if you're mashing the wrong buttons. There you go. Bam. So, Tomlet, man, you might actually deserve diamond rank. I can play Rashid if you need help. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
That would be helpful, just especially where we're going. I might run into a Rashid and defend the North. And Ricky, yes, he is a notorious masher. He's proud of his mashing, though.
I mash the right buttons at the right times.
Preach it. All right, and then lastly, we see the characters that have no representation, but I'm less surprised by most of this, except for maybe Jury.
Yeah, I feel like... so Jamie's much stronger than he was, but at the highest level of competition, I get it. Same thing with Kimberly, same thing with Manon and Lily and E Honda. Ryu, there's nothing wrong with Ryu, but I think he's just outshined right now by Ken and Akuma. Marisa, I think this goes back to what I was saying before, where at a lower level of play, a character like Marisa is really hard to fight against and hard to react to. But when you're at the highest level of play and you can react to that Superman punch every single time, you basically don't have that tool anymore.
Yep.
And so I feel like a lot of her stuff is not usable. Dalsum, I think, is just a rare character to see. Like, you're a Dalsum main or you don't touch Dalsum.
Yep.
So it's not the character that needs to work their way up here. It's the Dalsum players. And then, yeah, I think Jury's the only one I'm kind of surprised by.
Especially considering our first slide, which had 6 juries in last year's top 24 of CEO, right?
Right, and without pulling up the patch notes, I don't think Jury got nerfed very hard besides the universal drive rush nerf, which I do think she's being affected by.
Yeah.
I think Luke is affected by it as well, but I think Luke is just like so versatile and so strong and has such good corner carry, and he's so solid.
It hasn't hurt him that much.
Right, it took him down a few pegs, but he's still at the top. But with Jury, I don't play Jury, and I don't run into enough Juries to say yet, but I'm thinking that the drive rush nerf hurt her significantly.
Yeah.
And that she may have been nerfed from top 5 or top 10 closer to mid tier.
And I think too, like when the games go on for a while, like even if she's a strong character, you might not just see representation because people are like bored with it. The shine has worn off, and they're a newer character came out or some that more suits them. I think these things just kind of tend to move on just because there's no character represent. Like in this list, it makes sense to see 0 for some of these because you would expect that's not a strong character. But I think some of these, when you see it like that, you go, well, yeah, that maybe that's just what has changed over time. So my last question I wanted to ask now is, since we've talked about all these other tournaments from this past year and around the world, what about Button Club's character representation? We don't get a whole lot of doubles, or even, not everyone's playing everyone on the screen. So talk to me about that for a second.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because like Luke's a really strong character, but I'm the only Luke main at Button Club. And then Guile's a really strong character, and you're the only Guile at Button Club.
Yeah. Even when I was Ken, at that time, I was the only Ken at Button Club too. And I was surprised because that was during the Phenom Ken discourse and all that,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think it really isn't having to do with like the players at Button Club all going to the same character, which isn't Ken or isn't Guile or anything like that, or isn't Luke. I think it's more of the game is so balanced that at the level of play that most of the players are at, you can play whichever character you want, and it's not going to affect your tournament outcome very much. But I also think that, especially now in Season 2, so many characters are viable that you might have, like I said, 12 players at Button Club. You might have 11 or 12 different characters being represented with little to no overlap. And that's a good sign for the game.
It is. It is. My brother being the only Ryu. We had an E Honda when Bobby was playing the game, but he's kind of dipped out.
Yep.
Marissa's still in the fold a little bit here and there.
Yep. Yeah, we see a couple of Marisas.
But even Akuma, with the booming popularity of Akuma, we saw Toe switch to him. Temper has switched, and but that was really it.
Yeah, I mean, I played him for 2 weeks and then dropped him, but yeah, it wasn't like we didn't have like 5 Akumas like the week Akuma came out. It was a 2.
And I expected like at least a handful of Akumas, because even before Ed came out, I expect there's going to be 3 Eds at least in this week's Button Club because of that. Me, Toast, Tomlet, maybe even one other or something. But when it came time to that, having that time to work with him, because where they come out on a Wednesday or Friday?
I don't remember.
And then, to Button Club on Monday, it's not enough time to feel comfortable to bring that up. And then also there's not enough information exchange to be like, oh no, I've seen that Twitter clip highlight setup. I'm going to just completely mop when I go this week.
Yeah, so I think that the character variety in the game and the character variety that we're seeing at our weekly at Button Club is very healthy, meaning there's characters that even though they're perfectly viable and perfectly strong, it just so happens that we don't see them. We have like 1 to 2 Juries, we have a Kimberly, we have a Lily, your brother with Ryu.
We even have a Jamie.
Yep, very strong Jamie.
Yep. Tomlet's been working on a Lily. That's what you were saying, right?
Yep, yeah, he's a Lily main, and I think there's certain characters where like and then Milk's the Chun-Li. So there's certain, and then Beefcake with Aki. There's certain characters that were really lacking the representation. It's mostly characters like Zangief and Rashid.
Who had a Zangief in the beginning? I know Tomlet was messing around with him, but Tomato played a lot of Zangief in the beginning before he went and switched to someone that what'd you think was lower tier? Jamie was lower than?
Jamie was the lowest of tiers. Jamie wasn't on the tier list.
Yeah, so and hopefully with the the forever expanding of what Button Club is, we can get some new people in the door and get some new character representation there, because the better we can learn. I wish I should hit up that Ed player and be like, yo, when you coming back around, because we need your help.
Yeah, and he like when we get new players coming to Button Club, there's always the fear of like, oh, like this player might be brand new to the game, doesn't know how to do combos, and they might enter the bracket, go 0-2, and never see them again. And then the other thing happens where like you might get a player show up who mops the floor with everybody and is like, oh, there's no competition for me here, I'm just not coming back. And so for a player like that to come in, and I think he went like 2-2 or something, like his skill level was right on board with everybody else at Button Club. Yeah. So it felt like a good fit for him there. So I was surprised to see him not come back the next week.
Yeah, agreed.
So I'm hoping that they come back. And also a message out to anyone who's out there, if you're nervous about going to your local, just go to your local. It doesn't matter if you can't do combos. It doesn't matter if you're practically a pro player and you're going to mop everybody up. People at locals want people at their locals.
I think the biggest thing is just going there and being a friend. I think that's the coolest thing you can do to any local, honestly. You've got people that are going to go 0-2. They're still a great person, and you would hang out with them regardless of video games. And then even that dude DiGiorno is actually like a really, really nice guy. He's hit me up on Facebook. We've talked on Discord a little bit. So for someone to, be one of the better players in our area, and he's just a humble dude, and would hang out with him regardless. I think that's the most important thing, mindset you can going into your locals, is let's just go have fun, meet like-minded people, and then let the game speak for themselves on a separate note. I also do think when it comes to character representation at Button Club, there is a sense of character identity, and even if you wanted to play that character, no, that character's taken kind of by so-and-so, and I don't want to be the second-rate, I
don't want to be the second best Aki behind Beefcake.
Yes, exactly. I think that also has something to do with it too, because even before you picked Luke, I know the general consensus was no one liked Luke aesthetically as a character, what he sounds like, how he, everything. Regardless of where he placed on the tier list, people were like, no, Luke. Even Jared, I was like, Jared, I know Luke's going to be strong in this game. Like, you should totally play Luke. He's like, no, I can't do it with that voice and all that.
And it's funny that you say that because I still do hate Luke in Street Fighter V.
Yeah.
He's like the stupidest character. I don't like the way he looks. I don't like I don't like the way any of his moves feel. Like everything just feels bad. Everything looks bad. I don't like the way he sounds. I don't like the way he smells. But Street Fighter 6 Luke all day.
All day.
He's he's fantastic.
It's that little bit of maturity in those years for the character.
I mean, honestly, I think it's just earlier I was talking about how Guile feels more sluggish in 6 than he did in 5. Luke feels the opposite. He feels more sluggish in 5 than he does in 6. And I think that's what I needed.
Okay.
Is like a character that's strong like Luke, who happens to be Luke in 6, but less sluggish.
Mm-hmm.
And so for Luke to be less sluggish in 6 and Guile to be more sluggish in 6, it kind of makes sense now that I'm like, oh, I don't like these sluggish characters.
Is that because of how fast you're thinking and moving throughout the game that you need a character to be able to keep up?
I think so. And it's like especially with a character like Guile, and we talked about this last week, or like when you're playing Guile and you're mid-screen, you feel like you're in the corner. So at least in Street Fighter V, I feel like I can walk around. But in Street Fighter 6, I'm finding myself dashing more, jumping at times I don't really need to jump just because I feel like the ground movement is so slow. No, I'm doing things like sobot kicks and knees, using Guile's moves to move him around versus just utilizing his walk speed because it's slow. Or I'd have to look it up, but it feels slower than it was in 5.
It definitely feels slow. Yeah, no, I'll agree to that. There is a YouTube channel that I have found called Guile's Garden, and they're always sharing tech and other players and stuff. And I forget the player that they showed off, but they were like, look at this Guile who is all over the place, and he was constantly moving and doing something to make you not know which charge he had or where he was on the screen, and did the same thing, the sobot kicks and bazooka knees. And that's something that you guys were mentioning also last night to be doing more of, because I was more successful when I was doing that.
Yep.
So yeah, we're gonna keep working on that. I think we see like a new level of Guile like soon to be obtained. I feel like I'm on the cusp of a bigger breakthrough.
Yeah, and I feel like Guile is one of those characters, like if you're playing Guile great, then you're doing great. And if you're playing Guile slightly less than great, you're losing. Like it's almost like an all or nothing. Like if you're playing perfect, you're winning. If you're not playing perfect, you're losing.
Yeah. And I've also been doing what Alicia called gaslighting yourself last night, but telling yourself that everything's all right and you don't mind and that's totally fine. And last night Temper was like, oh, so you don't tech the throw. And he's like, yeah, I respect that. Like, yeah, just let it go. Okay, that's fine. And later on I was like, I'm going to try and tech this throw. I am. Okay, I teched it. All right. Like, trying to keep it moving. And I'm seeing those situations also, which has been a big help because we've been training so hard.
Yeah, every Thursday,
8:00. It was nice to have Milk in there last night.
Yeah, shout outs to Milk.
Yep. I felt like he was not playing as his usual self last night.
In what way?
I think he was a little bit more in like autopilot mode, and he was letting me get away with things that I was really surprised because I was reading every fireball and most of his jump-ins. So I was like, is he really on it right now, or is he just kind of like chilling? Or
it might be a weird matchup for Chun-Li.
Yeah.
I mean, Guile has the best fireballs in the game, so if she can't fight back with her fireballs
to get in, yeah, because I would know when he was going to do it, and I could see, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to OD right through this, or no, I have the blaze, so now I'll send it, it'll get through it. So that made that feel pretty easy. And maybe we can get a few other people into the room that night this week or something too, and try and expand. Maybe we can get my brother in there, try and coax into. Yeah,
because like we started out with like me, you, and Temper being like, oh, like we're all going to defend the North for Street Fighter 6. We need to practice up and be ready. But really, it should be like a training day for anyone at Button Club who like wants the practice.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, you need to go to training mode. Yeah, you need to play a little bit of ranked. But I feel like playing online with your friends, especially talking on the headsets, is the most valuable practice.
And then Temper right here. Good and bad days, baby. That's it. That's fighting games. And no one, in your life, the day-to-day, that there are good days and there are bad days.
Yep.
But I feel like when it comes to something like this and you're trying to perform, you take pride in all of the time that you've put into gaining this knowledge. It's so much harder for whatever reason to compute or to say to yourself, you know what, copium, I've just had a bad day.
Right.
And that's fine.
Or to give your opponent props and be like, oh, I didn't play bad. They played great.
They had a great day. Yeah, exactly. And understanding what that is, that's something that I've been really realizing lately. And my brother, I think, is starting to kind of get his hands on that, because we dip like this. When he's high, I'm low, and vice versa. But recently we kind of both hit a downswing with how we were feeling about ourselves and the game. And I just happened to kind of pick it up this week. But yeah, that's something that really, really needs to be said. Some days you're just not in it. Like you said earlier about some days you're just not a guile main. And that feels like it too. What was I doing? I was, being reckless. I was drive rushing in. I was just trying to play a different game. So I think that really, really is it. And I think also so will I have that mindset when we go to defend the North? Because kind of like, callousing up yourself with these weekly tournaments is great.
Yeah.
And if you have a bad week, yes, of course it sucks, but you go, but I'm going to be here next week.
Right. And I'm going to do my homework, and I'm going to come back stronger, and I'm going to see how I stack up against these guys next week.
Mm-hmm. And it's a quick turnaround time. But to have been planning a trip for all these months, working in on the training that we're putting in now, that little extra bit, the travel time, the money spent, the hype of the hotel and all that, will I be able to carry that mentality at that point to defend the North, to say, you know what, like, let's just have fun, let's focus? Or do I, pull out the old tournament nerves and start making big mistakes?
Yeah, and I think the ultimate answer is, like, let's say we didn't do a good job practicing, which we are doing a great job practicing, but let's say we weren't doing that, and then we showed up unprepared, and then let's say some of us go like 0-2 or 1-2. It's like, well, we deserve that, we earned that. And then same thing, look, let's say we're practicing as hard as we can, as hard as we are, all having full-time jobs, but we're practicing as much as reasonably possible, and we're doing well with the training, we're getting stronger, we're going to our weekly every week. If we show up and go 0-2, it doesn't change anything. We still deserve that. We still earned that loss. Our opponents did something that we didn't.
What would be a great outcome for you at Defend the North?
First place. Being more reasonable, top 32, I think.
Top 32?
Is like a good, reasonable goal, yeah.
Nice.
For all three of us.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh my God.
We in there.
Yeah. I'm working on it. In my head, these past few weeks, I'm like, last year I went 2-2 in pools, and I was really, really stoked. I felt like that was a big improvement. And I think I was one or two matches away from being out of my pool on loser side. I want to make it out of pools this year for sure.
Yeah, and in Street Fighter V, I never made it out of pools, but there was multiple times, I think it was twice, where I tied for 33rd place.
Wow. So right there, right on the cusp of it.
And this was like within the first 3 years of Street Fighter V, when I was not nearly as strong as I am now, or towards the end of Street Fighter V. And so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see you guys there.
Yeah, if you are.
But really quick before we sign off, I wanted to cover Menace tweet.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes, good point. All right, here you go, guys. Last topic of the night before we bid you.
Can we zoom that in?
I think we can. There we go. Bam. There we go. Good enough.
So Meta RD tweets, lost my round 1 match in the World Warrior event. I wonder how come I get such a strong player as a seed number 1 in my first match out of 262 participants. Online events are not viable for such a strong tour qualifier if they'll be managed this way. This is so frustrating. And so what Men is saying is, out of 262 participants, he is the number 1 seed. And what happens in tournaments typically is you seed the brackets. And so the number 1 player fights against the lowest level player first. And that's just the way brackets work.
Yep.
The whole point of seeding brackets is so you don't have like the number 1 versus number 2 early in a tournament. Or even like number 1 versus in a tournament this big with 262, you don't even want like the number 1 and the number 8 person fighting each other round 1. Because it's possible for the number 8 person to win and knock the number 1 person down so early. And so I don't know who his opponent was or how strong they actually are. But being able to beat MENA RD, in my mind, says out of 262 participants, you must be seeded in the top 132. And so that's kind of what I'm saying is the number one player should be fighting the number 262 player, or at a minimum, everyone
halfway up.
Right, everyone in the top 131 should be fighting against someone from the bottom 131 round one. And so for MENA to lose against someone, it might have just been, an online warrior who's been grinding and getting, 2,000 plus MR or whatever, and never going to a tournament. And so they didn't get seeded, and, very unlucky roll of the dice for MENA to be matched up with them. And then obviously MENA is strong enough to beat anybody on any given day. MENA could have a terrible day and fight the next strongest player in the world on their best day. He still has a shot of winning.
Yeah.
So I think it's, very unlucky that MENA was matched up against a strong player, and also very lucky that this strong player was able to perform well enough to beat MENA RD.
Yeah, because, how bad would you be shaking? Your round one match for you is MENA RD.
And if it was me versus MENA RD, I feel like that would make more sense versus whoever this player was, who was clearly capable of, taking out a top-level talent.
Temper says he deleted this tweet, so you're welcome. Thanks, buddy. And he's hoping for top 16. Really happy. So what was the region, if you can tell us, Temper, what was the region for this tournament? I know it's online, but this was just because he's East Coast, right? He's Boston. So was it just like the Northeast or the entire East Coast? And you couldn't find results on this when you were looking it up earlier, right? So,
no, but I'm wondering if it's just because it's so early in the tournament that with 262 players, it might just take a couple hours for
that information to be out.
Right, because they're not going to post, top 132 out of 262 players. They'll probably wait until they have like top 32 or top 16 figured out.
This last statement here. Online events are not viable for such a strong tour qualifier if they will be managed this way. This is so frustrating. What do you think he's talking about when it comes to this?
I think he's just talking about whether the tournaments are seeded or how well they're seeded.
Okay.
So I would imagine if it's an online tournament, let's just say for the sake of, easy math and easy numbers, everyone who entered this tournament is master rank. And let's just assume that whatever your rank number is truly indicative of your skill level. That MENA RD, being the number one player in the world, should be fighting against someone with like maybe 1,400 or 1,500 MR round one. And realistically, there's no chance that a 1,400 or 1,500 MR player is going to beat MENA RD.
No, shouldn't be a thing.
And so I'm assuming that what happened was MENA was matched up against someone with like 1,900 or 2,000 MR, and that player had a great day, and maybe MENA RD made one or two mistakes. But it's like that shouldn't be happening round one. And I think that let's say it happened round 4, I think that would have been totally fine. MENA RD would have been reasonably upset, but he wouldn't have tweeted like this. But losing round 1 is much, much worse, because for every match you win on the winner side, you basically skip a loser's match.
Okay, yeah.
Meaning, and again, just making up numbers. Let's say if you're on winner side and you make it all the way to winners grand finals, let's say you have to play like 6 matches. That means you have to play 12 matches in loser side. And so for him to lose round 1, if he's trying to win the tournament, he has to play twice as many matches now. And it's not just
exhaustion that goes with that.
Right. And when you get towards, like, let's say the middle of the losers bracket, there's plenty of strong players down there that were, either up against another strong player or they were upset by another player. And, MENA's going to have to fight really, really strong players in the losers bracket, knowing that if he loses, he's out of the tournament, might not even make top 32. And he's just going to have to fight twice as many rounds to make it to the finals.
So I guess it depends on what they go by when seeding, because if it's an online tournament and, let's say like they're not going to did they use start.gg?
I'm not sure.
Most places do, right?
Yeah.
Or the other Capcom things that we were looking at was all start GG, right?
Yeah, I think they do.
So if you're going to use that information for your seeding, I would imagine that would be a whole lot better rather than looking, if it's an online tournament, and then looking at their online names, which could be very different than how they're posted up on start GG, and then seeding them that way. Because like you said, this is insane for the 262 participant to be beating the number 1 seed. So maybe that was an oversight that happened. They were looking at the wrong information to place them there.
But that's also assuming that they seeded it at all.
So there you go. So that's a huge issue, not seeding I think not seeding any bracket.
Yeah, even at a local, you got to seed it.
You have to.
I don't want to fight you round one.
No. Well, like the better player is always going to win, but yeah, I know we did that once at Button Club against you and Clint.
But that was also my first week there.
That was your first week? Okay.
Yeah, so that was and again, kind of a good point, right? Me and Clint fought each other round one, and it was a close set, and he beat me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tore all the way through the losers bracket to fight him in grand finals, and in the end, I won the tournament. But it was like I should have not had to have fought him round one.
Yeah, and then work your way through losers bracket. If that had been seeded better, that wouldn't have been the thing.
Right, if it was seeded properly, him and I would have been on opposite sides of the bracket. We would have seen each other for the first time at winners finals.
Exactly. So yeah, not seeding a major tournament like this is a huge red flag if that's exactly what happened here. But then again, maybe it's because of the confusion between the accounts that like we can't actually seed all these players because I don't know who this is compared to their start GG and this is on their online name.
Well, I think in Start GG you have to, there's the option where you would have to put in your CFN name.
Okay.
But what I don't know is, does that mean they have to have an intern or somebody manually check 262 names on CFN and jot down their MR and hope that the account that they were given matches their skill level?
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing too. Like if you're not a well-known player like Mena RD or Knuckledoo or Punk, it's very easy to hide how strong you are. Right, like you can have an account with 2,000 MR, and then make another account that has, not ranked at all, or like let's say you got it to master rank, it has 1,500 MR. You can sign up with that account. They don't know how good you are.
That's true, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't play ranked at all, and he's unranked with his main character. But obviously, that wouldn't matter if he's the number one seed here, so that's not something that they're looking at. And even when it comes to like majors, so I know it's seeded to a degree, but like what about like most of those pools? How does all that kind of work together?
I think the pools, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the pools are only seeded if there's top players in that pool.
Okay.
So like let's say I'm in a pool of 16 players at Defend the North, and 2 or 3 of them are known named players. Those players will be seeded, and everyone else would just be randomly seeded.
I see. So it's not they're going to seed the whole thing. They'll just place those people where they belong and let the rest of the riff-raff fight through each other, basically.
Exactly. And so in that case, I could also understand if there's like a 2,000 MR online player that's their first time going to an offline tournament, and let's say they're in a pool like Shine, and Shine gets seeded because he's a strong and well-known player, and they have a close set, and Shine ends up losing round one. I could understand him being upset that he was placed against such a strong opponent. But that being said, it's like, how much time, effort, and resources do we really want to account for seeding? It's tough because it is important.
It is important. I think if you're a large scale, reputable tournament organizer, you're going to say this has to be seeded. And even to a degree, like you said, these top players get seeded a certain way. And if I don't know you or this and that, then you can get filled in the other way. But I would think that'd be a big oversight.
Yeah, there's even been talks of like having tournaments structured in a way where like if you're a pro player like Mena RD or Punk, that you basically skip the first round of pools and have all the other players that no one knows their names fight out in pools to make it out. Like I'm trying to remember the tournament they did. They did this where it was like they invited 15 players, and then the 16th slot was like the winner of the regular tournament. Kind of like an LCQ, but on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
I think they did that at, it was Red Bull. Was it Red Bull Kumite? I think it was a Red Bull event.
Oh yeah. The like the one that happened in Boston, right?
Yeah, because I'm forgetting his name. He played Abigail.
Cool Kid.
Cool Kid won the tournament and then made it in with like the pro players in the top 16.
Yep.
And then he won a couple of matches in there as well.
Yeah.
So there's thoughts of doing stuff like that, and everyone's like, well, no, that takes apart like the whole double elimination. Everyone's on a fair playing field. If Punk wins the tournament, it's because he started from the bottom and didn't get any special treatment. So I don't know.
And then lastly, what about the legitimacy of some of these online tournaments? Is this too big of a tournament series to be just strictly online?
There's multiple issues with online. So like if they don't ban Wi-Fi, that's an issue. If the connection is bad, like you know how sometimes you get online with a connection and it will say like press and hold the options button, and if your opponent also does it, then it cancels the match.
Yeah.
I feel like if that even pops up as an option, the tournament match should not be viable. Like obviously, I've never in my life had it where both players actually chose the option.
Yeah.
But I feel like if that even pops up as a warning that, hey, you have the option to cancel this match, that means it's null and void in my mind. And then the other issue that is being talked about less is people have cheat bots.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true on PC.
They can perfectly react to drive impacts. They can perfect parry stuff. And what's making it more complicated is they can set it variably. So they can be like, oh, I want my bot to react to drive impact with my drive impact 20% of the time. So they're let's say they're manually doing it 70% of the time. They're missing it 30% of the time, but the bot is doing it 20% of the time, and they're all in all 90% good on DIing the DI.
Yeah.
And they're cheating. They should be disqualified, but it's not obvious because they don't do it every time. And because the bot is only stepping in once in a while, it's not obvious.
Yeah. That's true. That's very, very true.
I mean, I've fought matches against people where I've gotten like 2 or 3 perfect parries back to back on like them pressing buttons on me. And in my head, I'm like, I hope they don't think I'm cheating just because I got a little bit lucky.
I played someone in Battle Hub in a 1st to 3, walked off and was like, this person's a bot. This person's a bot all day. There's just no way that they are perfect every time, and never got scrambly. Yeah. They were always just perfect. I was like, no, there's just no way. This person's absolutely a bot. Stay away from this. And
that's the tough thing. Like if you're fighting against a top player like Punk or Knuckle Dude, it might feel like they're cheating, but they're really, really good. And I think Capcom needs to do something to try to figure out who's cheating and ban them, and have a way to like read the inputs and try to figure out if they're cheating. And it's complicated because I think if there was a bot that was like, oh, when they DI, my bot is going to DI 6 frames later.
Yeah.
Then you can look and be like, oh, they always react to DI and it's always exactly 6 frames later. I feel like that's detectable.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But if their bot is only on 20% of the time, or if you set the bot to say, oh, I want you to DI between frames 4 and 10 randomly, now it looks like a human being.
That's true. Yeah, and then how do you prove all that?
Yeah. So I think it's much easier to cheat in online tournaments. In an offline tournament, I don't think it's possible to use those bots because they have to run on the hardware.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it's much more difficult. Like I don't know if it's possible for someone to have it loaded into a USB that's in right like
looks like the converter.
Right, like let's say you're playing on a hitbox that has the board inside of it that works on PS5, but your opponents don't know that. You have what looks like a Brooks converter. The outside's a Brooks converter, but you've opened it up and installed your bot.
So
you plug your controller that works on a PS5 into your bot. You plug the bot into the PS5. I mean, I'm just speculating. If that was possible, and let's say 3 people in the whole world are doing it, it's like they could be taking spots from pro players.
Yeah. No, it's very true. I got into a thing recently with a couple of like documentaries about cheating. That guy that cheated with the Donkey Kong games. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, using MAME instead of actual arcade hardware.
And then lying about it, and having the wrong colored joystick, and then perjuring himself on the stand.
That was amazing. And then we also watched a Smash player that would bring his own console to tournaments and then only want to play on his own because he had adjusted the hit and hurt boxes on characters and the frame data. So people are like, this person is always winning, 3-0 or 2-0ing his opponents. Who is this guy? And it took a long time. They actually had to like distract him by saying, yeah, so-and-so's going out to eat. Why don't you go out to eat? And they grabbed his console and started figuring out slowly and everything.
That's wild.
Yeah, so I imagine if it's happening out there, it could happen anywhere.
Right, and especially with more and more money on the line. I feel like up until recently, it was like, who's going to spend all this time and money and effort cheating a Street Fighter tournament to make top 8 at EVO and walk away with 2K.
Yeah.
But now it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's like you could have theoretically you could have a sponsor or a company helping someone cheat in order for their player to win.
Wow. That's true.
Theoretically, I mean, I'm not accusing anyone of doing this.
Yeah. But you know how things get.
I mean, if I'm a company, I'm spending $100K a year to sponsor a player, and I want them to win.
Spend $110K and make sure they win, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys, let's wrap up this episode of the Safe Sets podcast. We hope that you have enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a like. Comment down below what was your favorite part, or what do you think of some of these topics that we've covered. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We have reached over 2,100 now subscribers.
Wow, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you. And please check out some of our other content. We do have some big news that Button Club will be sharing on next week's episode, so you're not going to want to miss it if you are uninformed. And we'll catch you guys on the next video. Keep pressing the buttons and
stay safe.